Welcome to the 90s-Kid Library Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Goodman. I'm a professor, collector, and librarian of a pretty extensive home library of 90s media. I started this podcast to learn more about my favorite books, movies, and TV shows from this era, and we have a spectacular guest today. He's an actor who's appeared in so many childhood favorites like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Little Bear, Sci-Factor, and even Billy Madison. You can catch him at the New Jersey HorrorCon September 27th and 28th, as well as Monster Expo in Taunton, Massachusetts, October 18th and 19th. Please welcome Amos Crawley! I have to ask you from the outset, did you get teased maybe in a fun way about, Mr. Crawley sounding like Mr. Crowley from the Ozzy Osbourne song? Did that happen a lot?
I feel like that's more in the realm of compliment. That was like an exciting thing. I think people really liked that a lot. It gets mispronounced a lot. Like people just assume it's Crowley,
Right,
which kind of makes sense to me. Like there's a lot more cultural cachet with Crowley than Crawley.
right. Yeah, that song came out in the 80s, so you were... what year were you born?
I'm 81.
81. Okay, so right at that time period, you're growing
Yeah,
up.
yeah, no, it would have been a going concern. It would have been the type of thing that my schoolmates' older siblings would know.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. So yeah, you started acting at such a young age, it seems. How did this all start?
I only know it from it being told to me. I don't actually have memory of it. But as I understand it, my whole family is in the industry, like for several generations, um, grandparents, moving forward. So my parents were both performers, and as I understand it, my mother couldn't get a babysitter when she had an audition, so she brought me along, and they needed a kid, and that's kind of how it happened.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you get this first gig. Do you remember what that was?
I assume it was a commercial or something, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then, so do you have any brothers and sisters? Were they also into acting?
I do. I have two half siblings. They are also both in the industry, though not in front of the camera. My sister does hair on set. Um, she actually just won an Emmy for Shogun.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah. And my brother is a video editor,
Oh, gotcha. All right.
freelance video editor. So
Do you feel like it's somehow in your blood then to be...
I guess so. I mean, I guess it's like anything else, right? Like if your parents own a hardware store, you end up working at a hardware store, and
Yeah,
um, when you're surrounded by something, it is the sort of cultural norm.
right.
Um, all of my parents' friends were in the industry. The neighborhood I grew up in um, happened to be one of those sort of rundown neighborhoods that artists moved into and gentrified slowly.
What was your first acting role, besides commercials that you can remember?
The first thing that I remember really clearly was a movie called Heaven on Earth that was about British orphans from the First World War being sent to Canada to live with distant relatives. And I played the main kid who was mute,
Oh,
which was convenient because I don't think at 5 years old my British accent would have been particularly strong.
that's a good point. Also, you don't have to memorize all those lines, I
Didn't have to
guess.
memorize all those lines. So I remember that fairly clearly. Um, it was me and the guy who sort of played my adopted older brother was Torque Campbell from the band Stars. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's sort of what
amazing.
he's gone on to do. And I remember it because it was exciting and it was fun, but I also particularly remember it because about halfway through shooting, I got a spider bite,
Oh, no way.
and my eye swelled up to like the size of a golf ball.
Oh,
And this being the 1980s, there wasn't a lot to do to fix it, and the show must go on. You have to shoot. So there's several scenes in the movie where I just have a hat pulled down over half of my face
I am looking
so
this
that you
movie up later after we
can't
talk. Heaven on Earth. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you'd be able to find it. I think it played on Masterpiece Theater,
Okay.
on like the BBC on Masterpiece
Then it's
Theater, because it was a
probably on
British
YouTube somewhere.
co-production.
I will find it.
But yeah, I would have been 5 or 6, like in that.
Right,
And
right. Oh man. And also very early on you started doing voice acting, a lot of voice work. I mean,
mhm.
were you auditioning for those? How did you get those parts?
Yeah, I must have auditioned. I think Babar would have been the first one,
Right, yeah.
probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's as simple as when you need a kid's voice, you basically it sounds so kind of prosaic, but like I learned to read early. I luckily learned to read early, and that's like I think that's kind of the difference maker for voice work when you're 5 or 6 years old is
Okay,
like,
yeah.
are you a strong reader? Because that's what you're doing, right? You're standing at a music stand and reading your script.
Right.
And I think that has as much to do with it as anything. So for all you aspiring young actors,
Learn to
get
read.
hooked on phonics.
Yes, yes. Well, it's funny because I to me I that might be one critical element to becoming successful as a young child actor, but another major thing seems to be just following instructions. I have
Yeah,
two children. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. They do not listen. And
it's very true.
yeah, I try to tell them to smile for pictures. They will not smile for pictures. Clean your room, won't clean their room. Bunch of different commands that I've tried out. Nothing seems to work. And it amazes me now, especially as a parent, seeing these child actors being like outstanding performers, but also just simply following instructions.
Yeah, it's funny. I'd never thought of it in those terms. But you're right. I mean, I have kids. I understand the struggle is real. Um, uh, I wonder if it has something to do with just a natural temperament. Um, I know I was like a particularly sort of quiet kid, and I liked things to be fairly orderly and tidy, and and then I guess it gets reinforced once you have some success that way, right? Like you are rewarded for the ability to do that, which has its pluses and minuses. I wouldn't suggest otherwise.
I'm, looking over your IMDb page. I see a few surprises there. So, did you work with Mr. T at some point
Sure
early on?
did. Sure
Yeah,
did. Um,
you
uh,
knew who he was at the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was old enough at the time that like I had watched the A Team. I had an older brother, right? So like the A Team was a big thing. And this would have been not too long after WrestleMania 3. I think he was in WrestleMania 3. I can't remember. Might have been 2. I'm really showing my age here. Um, but yeah, no, I definitely knew who he was, and it was like very exciting. And he was lovely, lovely, sweet, nice man.
That's gratifying to hear. That was one of my questions because he has this on-screen persona of being kind of gruff, intimidating, but he
Yeah,
wasn't that way off camera.
he couldn't have been less like that. And he was so sweet. I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't sound um, like I'm disparaging the man because he was so terrific. He was not great with memorizing lines.
Uh-huh.
This was not a strength of his. Um, um, and so there were a lot of takes, but I remember in between takes him coming up. I was 8 or 9 years old or something, and he just said, "I can't believe you're so good with the lines. How do you do that?" And I don't think he meant it in any other way that like it just made me feel good, And I got to hang out with Mr. T for a day. Not many kids get to do that.
Um, so I mean, I'm seeing, like I said, I was looking over your IMDb page and I'm seeing tons of things at such a young age. Did you feel like you were having a relatively normal childhood, or maybe you weren't, but that was a good thing?
Um, it's only in retrospect that I recognize that there was something exceptional or different about it. Because when it's your life, it's just your life. You know what I mean? I think I didn't have a lot to compare it to. As I said, like most of most of the people in my immediate circle were also in that industry, and you
Right.
know, I, as I mentioned, I was kind of a quiet kid. I didn't actually have like a lot of friends, and this is not a pity party or anything, but like it never really occurred to me that this was unusual. That I didn't play baseball in the summer necessarily. I went and hung out on film sets. In retrospect, I obviously I recognize how different it is, and certainly there is an interesting. I don't know, you've probably interviewed a lot of people who started acting at a relatively young age because of the nature of your show. And I don't know if anyone else has ever said this, but I certainly feel, and I've sort of confirmed it with other people, like there is kind of like a child actor. When I meet someone else who was a child actor or see someone, there's an immediate identification. Like it's oh, okay, we understand the same kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Particularly the era that we're talking about when, there were a lot fewer guardrails in place than there are now,
Right. Yeah.
in terms of how long you were working and what was sort of acceptable um, circumstances for you to find yourself in. And again, I was a very lucky and relatively happy kid. It's not that I had terrible
Yeah.
experiences, but it is still a job at a time when your brain hasn't really developed. There's a reason you usually get your first job at like 15 or 16,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't remember thinking it was particularly strange or different. It was just kind of what I did.
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting experience hitting young adulthood, hitting 18, 19, 20, and
Of
all of
course.
a sudden, and I did make the decision to make more of a study of it, and I went to theater school, and I did all this stuff that I hadn't done, and I met all these people who were just embarking on their careers,
Yeah.
and they became my peers in a much more legitimate way, in a certain respect. Um, that's when I sort of recognized, oh, right, I had this entree into something. Um, and again, I'm rambling now, but
No, no,
it's
I
also
love
such an
this. Yeah.
interesting time period for it to have happened with because I got to see a lot of changes. Like when I started, we shot on film, and I remember digital stuff coming in and people being sort of suspicious of it. And now you go like, well, I couldn't imagine. I was shooting something last week and it was very dialogue heavy and very technical in its dialogue. We were using a lot of like lingo. It was about we were playing pilots and we had to use all this. I spent
Cool.
half the time just Googling terms and
Yeah.
figuring out like, what does this
Learning
even
how to
mean?
pronounce them and all.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that, there were several occasions where we would trip over something and then, you'd hear the director from Video Village to say, like, okay, take a breath, go again. And like that was unheard of in the 80s because you were burning film. It was costing money to do that. And now you can just sort of keep. We had takes that were probably 20 or 30 minutes long. I don't
Hmm.
envy editors having to sort through all that stuff, but
Well, I mean, it's probably still easier digitally to edit, but yeah.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, nobody's using razor blades.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's also interesting to me. So you were like still constantly out of school, for these shoots, and but it was part of your normal life, and your family was involved in the industry. A lot of your friends were probably those you were meeting on film sets, so it was all pretty normal to you.
Yeah, and certainly once I got into my teen years, I went to an arts high school. So I
Oh,
was
okay.
I was far from the only person in that situation.
Right.
And even the other kids who weren't necessarily working professionally, that was still their goal. So there was nothing sort of weird about it or nothing
Right.
particularly different about it.
Hmm.
Yeah, as I've sort of transitioned in my adult life into doing a lot of coaching, on-set coaching and audition coaching and stuff. Sometimes with younger actors, sometimes with fellow adults, but I'm increasingly of the mindset that it is a job, that
Hmm.
it is a job not unlike any other job. particularly when you find yourself at kind of a level of there's a term that we use a lot called the creative working class, right? Like I happen to play make believe for a living, but I'm not a superstar and I'm not, someone whose life is fundamentally changed. It's my job. It's my job the same way that like my next door neighbor drives a truck for Coca-Cola,
Uh-huh.
and my other next door neighbor like finances used cars. And like we show up and we go to work. And I think that even as a kid, I did kind of have that temperament. Um, the sort of trappings of feeling that you're somehow special or something. No, I just learned how to read early.
I mean, that's a very healthy mindset.
I mean, I've done a lot of therapy, Jared.
So a little bit later here, so you were in a movie called Rent-A-Kid, and
Hmm.
I remember seeing this when I was very young. It must
Oh,
have
wow.
been, yeah, I'm trying to remember now how I saw it. I think it must have either been on TV or maybe the mom and pop shop, the mom and pop rental store that we had in town had a copy of it on VHS. But
I think it was, if I could be wrong about this, but I do think it was one of those like TBS specials. It was like one of those movies that was
gotcha,
just like
yeah.
on every Sunday afternoon for a little while there.
Yeah,
Like,
and I was kind of young when it came out, so it must have been like on TV, and I was playing with toys, and there was some osmosis
right.
through the airwaves, and it got into my brain and committed to long-term memory. But so you play an orphan in this, which is funny because you said you played an orphan before.
Yeah, it's true.
So in the movie, you have a brother and a sister. You're all orphans. Your brother and sister, Cody Jones and Tabitha Lupine. I don't know if I'm
Hmm.
pronouncing that correctly, but
I
they
think so.
were they were both in Goosebumps as well. It's kind of interesting. Uh, but what's also remarkable about this movie is that you got to share screen with Leslie Nielsen.
Hmm.
And in the movie, his character seizes control of the orphanage for a little while. He starts renting out kids to parents who aren't sure if they want to adopt yet, so they're like trying it out first
Yeah.
to see if they want to keep the kids. I mean, what was that like working with Leslie Nielsen?
It honestly, it could not. It's exactly what you would have wanted it to be.
Oh, that's amazing.
He was charming. He was funny. The guy that you saw on screen, that sort of affable goofiness, was also who he was as a human being, or at least in my limited exposure to him. He quite literally always had a whoopee cushion in his pocket, and he would squeeze it, and then he would look at you and shake his head and embarrass you in front of everybody. And despite the fact that he would do that several times a day, it was never not funny.
Uh-huh.
I think that he, again, in a very small sample size, but I had a distinct impression that he saw his role in the world to just make people happy,
That's beautiful.
And I
Yeah.
know that he was like a trained Shakespearean guy. He was at the Stratford Festival. He was, but I think that he actually took more pride in going like, if I can make somebody giggle every day, I've maybe done something.
Hmm. It's funny that whoopee cushion story. I was going to ask about that specifically because
Okay.
I was recently listening to Conan O'Brien's podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. He was talking about this because he had worked as a writer on SNL. And when Leslie Nielsen hosted, he didn't, so Conan didn't describe it as a whoopee cushion, but it was like a little box of some kind that he had made out of wood, and there was a little button. And whenever he pressed it, it made a fart sound. And he would just do it in the middle of a conversation. And then he would do this double take, like where'd that come from? That kind of
Totally.
thing.
Totally.
So he really was doing that on a set for your movie as well.
Yeah. Um, and then Christopher Lloyd was in that movie
Yes, I
too.
was going to ask you about that as well.
You
So, I
know,
mean, that's another legendary actor. What was that like working with him?
I was probably pretty starstruck. I still contend that Back to the Future is a perfect film. And so it was pretty exciting. He was also like a last minute replacement.
Oh, okay.
The role was actually going to be played by John Candy. So all through
Oh,
pre-production, that had been, and then he passed
he
away.
passed away. Yeah.
but it had been written for him, and he had been attached, and then graciously, Christopher Lloyd stepped in, and was the paradigm of professional, and but could not be more different than his persona. You know,
Really?
when you
Okay.
think of Taxi or Doc Brown, or like I don't know that I heard him say more than 6 words that were not scripted.
A bit quiet.
Just very quiet, very sort of contained and kept to himself, and did his job and was kind and was polite and was, but uh, completely the opposite of what you would imagine.
Yeah, yeah, he's very on his characters are very physical,
Hmm.
always moving. Uncle Fester, again, another great
Totally.
character that he's played.
And yet I actually remember so clearly Stillness,
Mm,
that in
yeah.
between takes he would just be sitting on a chair, just not moving, sometimes with his eyes closed, just, whatever that performance aspect was, that was, it lived in a separate world, or at least it did at that time.
Yeah, it's something that he could easily turn on and turn off, it appears.
Yeah.
Steve Martin has been described that way as well, I believe.
Is that right?
Very,
Okay.
very funny on screen, active, but in person, when you meet him, he's very quiet. So I hear. So I'm assuming there's a lot of performers who act that way, where it's not like Leslie Nielsen, where that's just how they always are, but
Yeah.
they have this on-screen persona that again can be turned on, turned off pretty easily.
Yeah, and I don't pretend to speak for anybody, but I wonder if, like, the higher energy or the more sort of dynamic the character is, maybe the less that is part of your, just because the energy expenditure necessary to do it
Yeah, that's a good.
means that you have to keep it in reserve at all other times.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, of course. So like I was saying before, Cody Jones and Tabitha Lupine also appeared in Goosebumps episodes.
Mhm.
Cody Jones was actually in The Haunted Mask, the same
Hmm.
episode you were in, playing Carly Beth's brother. Uh, and it's funny that there's just this overlap of all of these Canadian actors appearing in a lot of the same projects. Catherine Long, who played Carly Beth in Haunted Mask, was also in Psy Factor. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Ready or Not? A lot of the things that you were in. Were you constantly seeing these same kids at auditions? Were you at all a closely knit group, like your own version of the Brat Pack? Was there anything like that going on?
I mean, it was a much smaller industry. It's so funny to talk about. It's not that long ago, but it is, 35 years ago or 30 years ago. And it was just a much smaller world. Like, I do think that you saw the same 6 or 10 people in those audition rooms. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
knew who they were. If we didn't know each other, actually know each other, we still certainly, like, knew each other on sight. And turning on the TV, you'd see something that you auditioned for, and it's like, oh, well, Chris Redmond got that one, or Zachary Bennett got that one, or whatever it was. And I was talking about that shared. I still know some of these people as adults, and we do have that shared, like, oh, okay, we did that together. Um, but yeah, it was just a lot smaller. It's daunting now. As I say, I work a lot as a coach now, and there's just thousands of kids. There's
yeah,
just, and I don't know what that explosion is. I think a lot of it has to do with, as an industry, it's been very democratized, which I think is ultimately a good thing. You know,
right.
in we most auditioning now is done via self-tape, from your home, which, it can be a hassle, but it also means that if you have an iPhone, you can audition for a Disney Plus show. Do you know
Right,
what I
yeah.
mean? As opposed to it being gate kept in the same way that it used to be. Um, the financial aspect of things, I think, is a lot different. In the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of money in the film industry, and a lot of it was coming up north to Canada, at least for sort of mid-level productions like the ones that we're talking about. So yeah, so the same kids end up in everything because there just frankly weren't that many of us.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Are You Afraid of the Dark? So in
Hmm.
1995, this episode premiered called The Tale of the Ghastly Grinner. It's probably one of the most famous episodes of that series. The episode itself is exceptionally fun and zany for an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. And I think a lot of that, personally, at least from my own perspective, is owed to Ron Oliver, who wrote and directed that episode. He's, you know, again, this is an outsider perspective, but his work is very campy in the best way, very almost like celebrating campiness
Hmm.
and having a love for it. And he's able to do it in such a way where it doesn't discredit any of the storytelling, the characters, the tension. He's able to keep all of that intact, but still make it insanely fun. And I think in addition to Tale of the Ghastly Grinner, a good example of this is Prom Night 2, which is
Hmm.
I think, his first credit, and it's a writing credit. Have you seen Prom Night 2
I mean, years ago, but
years
yeah.
ago? Okay,
Yeah.
it's bonkers. And
Yeah.
I think when I was rewatching Tale of the Ghastly Grinner recently, it just reminded me so much of Prom Night 2. Um,
So Ron's claim to fame, at least for my generation, in Canada. I'm sorry, Jared, where are you? I actually don't know.
I'm in Delaware in the US, so
You're in Delaware. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
How often do people make that Wayne's World joke to
Oh,
you?
all the time.
Yeah, okay, good.
I make the joke
Um,
myself, yes.
yeah. So in Canada, there was a channel called YTV,
Yes.
like youth television, and they had what they called PJs, program jockeys. So in between episodes of things, you'd have, the equivalent of like an MTV VJ or whatever talking in between. But Ron was one of those guys.
Okay, I did not know
Uh,
this. All right.
yeah, and he was like really wacky, and he had puppets, and it was very bizarre. And I suspect that there were jokes that were going over my head as a kid. Um, so when we did Ghastly Grinner, it was so funny because I was meeting like PJ Ron, not really realizing that he had this whole other career. Um, uh, and I could be misremembering this, but I have this strong feeling that that episode in particular, because I think Ron directed like half of the episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
It was
He
a lot of
directed
them, yeah.
a ton of them. I think he probably did some Goosebumps too.
A bunch of, yep.
Um,
Hmm.
um, but I have this recollection that that particular episode was one where they really gave him the reins. Like I
Doesn't
think that
surprise me at all.
he had proved himself to be, coming in on budget, and the episodes would air well and all of that. And they sort of said, you can do whatever you want. Because he was a comic book guy. And that whole thing was like, and again, I could be misremembering this, but I remember distinctly having that impression that it was personal for him to do that and to have that kind of fun. And I think if that comes across, that might be part of the reason why. And it was a great set. It was a fun set.
Oh my goodness. I was going to ask about the set. The comic book store, all the giant standees of comic book characters, like a Wolverine I saw, Superman, I believe, and also tons of comic books. Some of them were obviously fake. There was like a Dust Boy and a Fishman, and then of
Yeah,
course
yeah, yeah.
Ghastly Grinner. Um, were you able? I mean, what was it like working in that set? I mean, were you a comic book fan yourself?
I was, yeah.
And I see Spider-Man in the background. It's silly to ask, I guess, but
It's true. Technically, that is my son's bedroom, but
uh-huh.
not that I haven't encouraged it. Um, yeah, no, and especially that I was 13 or 14 or whatever, I was really starting to get into I was really starting to get into actually kind of like my local music scene and my local like independent and punk music scene. But the crossover between that world and comic books and horror movies, like that's
Yeah.
a Venn diagram that's always overlapping, right? But it was a real comic book store in Montreal.
Oh, I
I
see.
don't know what it was called, but we shot at night, right? Like the store was closed up and then we shot all night and then we were just leaving in the morning as the owners were coming to like open up for the day. So it was a dream, you just hanging out in between setups or whatever. You could just go sit and open a comic book.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sit there and read, you know? So it was terrific. Um, it was a good era for comic books too. Like we were just on the tail end of Chris Claremont doing X-Men, I think. It was good stuff. So it was great. It was great. And everybody was sort of thrilled because I think there were a lot of people for whom this was kind of kid in the candy store territory.
I was going to ask you if you were able to keep anything from the set, but now it's sounding like it's a real store, so maybe you weren't able to.
The one thing that I had, because people over the years have tried to track down the comic book and stuff,
Yeah.
I never had that. I did have a T-shirt. We got T-shirts made up with the Ghastly Grinner on it,
Oh, cool.
and I did have a T-shirt that eventually just fell apart. Like eventually, it just I think it was like a vinyl pressing of the image, and it just flaked off
If you
as the
wash it a
years
few
went by.
times, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
gonna hold up.
So that would have been the one thing that I kept. I don't know where all the other stuff. It's probably in the hands of collectors somewhere.
Yeah,
People are
possibly.
amazing at tracking that stuff down.
I know somebody who owns a lot of the props from Are You Afraid of the Dark? I don't know if he has things from that specific episode. It's funny, even in the episode, at one point, we see an illustration of you. It's a shame that you weren't able to keep that one at
I
least.
know, I
Yeah.
know. But again, you don't know what this stuff's going to end up being, right?
Yeah.
Like at the time, you're in Montreal, you're shooting a TV show, it's super fun, the director's great, the subject matter is right up your alley, but you don't know what's going to happen with it. It's always sort of this like amazing thing to me that I'm sitting here talking to you about these things because I was in other episodes of things that have been totally lost to time and forgotten. So I guess you never really know what's gonna strike a chord with people. Again, in retrospect, you think about, oh, they gave Ron Oliver the reins to do whatever he wanted. No wonder it struck a chord with people, because I think when you personalize something, it actually becomes more universal. But you don't know at the time, right? At the
Right.
time, it's 7 days of your life.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. You never know what's going to stick in people's brains and become a lifelong nostalgic treat for people in my generation. The episode you play a character who wants to become a comic book artist.
Mhm.
Was that ever in your head as a kid at all to do comic book art?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not very talented. I can barely draw stick figures.
Mm,
But I do remember I had How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way,
yeah, I think I had that as well.
and I remember sitting for hours upon hours and hours, and I couldn't make anything look like it was supposed to look. I followed all the directions. I
Yeah.
did the best I could, and my very best stuff looked like a 4-year-old's version of whatever it was. But you can't be good at everything.
You also had long hair in this episode, and you seem to have kept it for a lot of roles. Did you grow that out specifically for one role and then just kept it, or was this part of your punk influence, maybe?
Yeah, I think that was just part of my like music nerd. Um, you know, that was the era, of the early grunge era. Um, that was just the look. I do remember that they asked me to cut it for that episode, for that
For that
particular
episode,
episode. Like
really?
that was kind of a like casting call, and they said that they really like you. Are you willing to cut your hair? And I was ballsy enough at 13 to say no,
Yeah.
and then it worked out.
I think it
Um,
looks great, honestly, for that character too. So, because he's playing kind of an outcast in a way.
I wish I could remember the hair artist's name, and I don't because it's lost in the memories of time for me. But I do remember that she was so clever. She said, "At one, I'm glad you kept your hair," and she said, "Two, do you know who Tim Burton is?" And I said, "Yes," and she said, "We're gonna make you look like Tim Burton."
That's cool. Yeah.
That was kind of the like, yeah,
Yeah. So that was the look they were going for.
yeah.
So in 1995 as well, Billy Madison comes out.
Hmm.
You play one of Adam Sandler's high school friends, and this movie it came out before Adam Sandler was mega famous. I mean, he was on SNL, and I think he was in a few movies before
Might
this,
have done Airheads.
possibly Airheads. There was another movie going overboard. When I was when I was a kid during this time, I watched everything Adam Sandler. Billy Madison, I was obsessed with Billy Madison. We I think we recorded it from TV at one point, and that version had scenes that weren't in the actual theatrical version or the one you
Oh,
could get at
cool.
the video store. But again, obsessed with this movie, watched it multiple times a day for years, I'm sure. What was it like working with Adam Sandler before his mega stardom?
Um, well, I guess in one way, again, you don't know what's coming down the road. You don't know that he is going to become arguably the most bankable comedic actor of his
Yeah.
generation. Not to mention just an excellent actor overall. Like when you watch Uncut Gems or whatever, it's just mind-blowing. Um, but I certainly was already, I was an SNL kid. I loved SNL, like most kids at
Being
that
Canadian
time.
as well. I mean, a lot of Lorne Michaels, a lot of the cast
Totally.
members are coming from that school of comedy.
So as much as he was certainly not mega, we already knew about Opera Man and we already knew about the Lunch Lady
Hmm.
song and the Hanukkah song, and like he was already a known quantity.
Sure.
Um, but he was a lovely guy. He was kind to all of the young actors, hung out with us, didn't, like was really lovely. He was very focused. I think that he might have known that this was the beginning of a new thing,
And there was a lot riding on it.
and there was a lot riding on it,
Hmm.
and so he took it very seriously, but not in any way that was like difficult for anyone else to be around, and uh, uh, you know, uh, very very patient and kind with. Um, I can only speak for myself. I was at the height of sort of snotty adolescence.
Uh-huh. Well, that's perfect for
Um,
that role. Yeah.
right? And but very, very kind and very lovely.
Did he try to make you laugh when the cameras weren't rolling? Anything like that? Was he that type of personality, or again,
No,
he was
I
very
think he was
focused?
pretty. When I say he was focused, I think he was pretty focused on doing the movie and doing the, like, so in between takes, he was off talking with a director or writer and like, how can we make this funnier? How can we make this, and it is a movie where like I watched it not long ago, funnily enough. My kids wanted to see it. I have a 13-year-old with long hair who like if you pause the scene in the lunchroom, like you'd think it was
That's
him.
amazing. Yeah, looks a lot like you.
Yeah. Um, and you like the voice of his comedy sort of came out fully formed, right? Like you watch that movie and like that is the template
Right.
for sort of everything he did for the first 10 years or so of his career, right? That sense of anarchy and these sort of like jokes that come out of nowhere and that like on paper aren't funny, but they actually are really, really funny.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, for, but I think he was pretty serious about that, and I think he wanted that to happen, or at least that's my memory of it. Um, but he would still hang out, and we would talk about music, and
Oh,
I
cool.
remember he did a very good Jay Mascis impression. I was really into Dinosaur Jr. at the time, and
Oh,
he
cool. Yeah,
did good
yeah,
Jay Mas- I remember talking with Norm Macdonald a lot,
yeah.
who was also Canadian, and so there was
Hmm.
a little bit of a like, we would talk about that, and I got to meet Steve Buscemi.
Oh, wow. Did you really?
I was not in any scenes with him, but
Yeah,
he
that
was
I'm
on
surprised.
set at the same time as me. And this is not long after Reservoir Dogs. And I had seen Reservoir Dogs several times. I was obsessed with it. I'm a little bit older than you, I assume. So like that would have been my version of watching something over and over and over again. And and I was in a makeup trailer and Mr. Pink walked in and he could not have been. He just turned around and he said, "Hey, I'm Steve." Just introduced himself and just he just go, "Yeah, yeah, no, no, I know, I know who you are." But that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And Chris Farley, did you get to work with him at all?
I don't know that I remember seeing him during rehearsals because we actually did a couple of days of rehearsal before the movie started and just in a hotel, like, you know, like a banquet room almost or whatever. And I think he was like coming in as I was coming out, but I never really got to spend any time with him, unfortunately, because that would have been cool. Um, but yeah, I have lots of great. Tamara Davis, who directed it, was married to Mike D from the Beastie Boys,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and I went to see the Beastie Boys that summer,
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
um, which was just so cool. And yeah,
So the Haunted Mask comes along, the classic Goosebumps story about Carly Beth and the scary Halloween mask she can't take off. You play Chuck Green, one of the bullies who would scare her. You famously put a worm in her sandwich. And then, of course, she uses the mask to seek vengeance on her bullies.
Mhm.
How did you get this role? Was it the same
I just would
process
have
as always?
auditioned. Yeah, the director of the first one was Tim Bond, I think.
Yes, Timothy
Yeah,
Bond. Uh-huh.
yeah. And I had worked with him before. We did a movie called Night of the Twisters.
Yes, yeah.
And he's an old school Canadian director. Like he had known my parents,
Oh, wow.
um,
Yeah.
from Ottawa. I think he had worked for my grandfather as a very young man, like one of his first jobs in the film industry.
Oh, cool.
Because my grandfather was a producer. Um, so so I might have had a leg up because of that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Um, but I can't I won't lie to you. I don't remember much about the audition process.
Because you're going on a lot of auditions.
Yeah, it was kind of that was the norm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you familiar with the books at the time? The Goosebumps books?
I don't know that I would have been. I would have known the Fear Street books.
Yeah. Because you were a little
Um,
older.
yeah, exactly.
How old were you at this time? Just about?
This was what, 94, 95,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
somewhere
Would
in
have been
there.
right
So
around
yeah,
there.
like 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense that you would have moved on from the middle grade horror and moving up to Fear Street.
Yeah,
So at least you were familiar with R.L. Stein's work.
totally.
Did you get to meet him? I know he did come to
Yeah, he was
set.
there the whole time.
Oh,
Uh,
really? Okay.
and in very as I have learned, typical of people who have twisted creative minds,
Yeah.
genteel, sweet Mr. Rogers vibes,
Yeah.
like, and that seems to sort of always be the case somehow.
It's true. You hear that about a lot of not just horror writers like R.L. Stine, but also directors. They seem
Hmm.
to be the nicest people off screen. It's like they put all of their anger and their angst in their movies and their stories.
It's exercised, maybe. When
Yeah.
I was a kid, in the sort of, we used to say in the local scene, you'd say, hippies are mean people pretending to be nice, and punks are nice people pretending to be mean.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the cast on the Haunted Mask, mainly younger people. That had to be a fun set. I mean, did you pass the time in those days? Like, what'd you do between shots when you're setting up a new scene or shot?
Talked about movies, talked about music, talked about things that, I mean, because you're still just teenagers, right? You sort of
Yeah.
did all the same things that teenagers would do, except it was the middle of the night and you were in a graveyard. Which actually, a lot of teenagers do that anyway, so
Yeah, sure.
just without the cameras.
And were there any like fun hijinks and stuff, or you didn't get into any trouble, I presume?
I don't think so, not that I recall. Um, I know there's the story of Catherine eating the worm,
Yes.
which is a
Hmm.
true story.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. She
but
really
that
bit
wasn't
into
a
that
prank.
worm.
That was self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I don't remember much of that, but just hanging out and having a good time. And the thing about, and it was true of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And it's true of, like, when you're doing these sort of genre pieces, like, it's pretty fun to be on set because, like, there's just crazy, like, there's fog machines going and there's special effects and there's, prosthetics, and, like, it's fun. It's a fun
Yeah.
thing to do. You're wearing a costume, like, it's you almost don't need any additional hijinks
That's a good point. Yeah.
because it's kind of what you're getting paid to do.
The mask so there were several masks that they used
Mhm.
for the haunted mask. One of them was one that you could actually take on pretty easily, take off. It wasn't the kind that had to be like fixed to Catherine Long's skin. Did you get a chance to wear the mask at all?
I don't remember ever wearing the mask. I probably would have poked at it a little bit, but I don't remember ever putting it on. I think it might have ruined whatever outfit I was having to wear, which
I
was
guess everybody was probably really protective of it as well.
yeah, that's the other thing, right? Is that
Hmm.
like I think that show looked pretty good for its era and for its time, but I don't think it had a huge budget.
Hmm.
I think there was like if something goes wrong with that mask, we're all fired.
Yeah. What's interesting about your character in The Haunted Mask, it's a little bit different than the types of roles you would play before. Here you're playing a bully. Your other roles up to this point, and many that come later, you're the one being bullied. And like, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Psy Factor, and even Billy Madison. What was it like playing a bully for a change?
You know, um, that's a really good question. No one's ever asked that before. I'd never really thought about it that way. I will say what I remember more than thinking of myself as a bully was thinking of myself as a sidekick. Like that's the thing that defines it for me more is that like maybe the bullying isn't as natural a thing for that character, but as a lackey, as a sidekick, you go along with it. I think that would probably be more relatable for me, um, because the instances in my childhood where I was a bully, it would have always been in an attempt to make somebody else think I was cool,
Yeah.
as opposed to coming from like a an actual mean-spiritedness, which is almost more, it's almost worse in a way.
I mean, it sounds like a rationalization. Like, oh, I'm only being mean because others are mean to me.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
no, but
yeah.
that's I do think that is the case with many bullies. I mean, they were probably bullied at one point in their lives, or maybe they're, being bullied by their parents at home, an older
Mhm.
brother, and they feel the need to, I don't know, achieve some kind of dominance or
Mhm.
purge those feelings, and they do it by passing them on to someone else, by making
Right.
somebody else feel bad. And I think your character, Chuck Green in The Haunted Mask, it does feel that way. It feels like maybe, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but it seems like the character is maybe insecure themselves, being the sidekick, and feels the need to be popular or make themselves seem cooler by being a bully. And
Yeah.
later in the episode, when Carly Beth is wearing the mask, the mask is taking over. She starts to become a bully, and we get to see how easily bullied Chuck and Steve really are. So it's
Totally.
it's it's almost like this is their true selves. Like they're also very scared kids. Um, so I think your take on that definitely makes sense to me.
I think kids also it's funny, we mentioned before like one of the weird things about having a job as a kid is you're not necessarily developed in the same way that you are when you're older and
Yeah.
entering the workforce. I think that's and I don't think this is across the board. I think there are as many types of bullying as there are kids in the world. But I think oftentimes we don't necessarily, or kids don't really necessarily recognize the damage that they're doing. They think they're being goofy. They think they're telling a joke. They think that everything is all in good fun
Right.
without really realizing, oh no, I'm actually like scaring that kid. I mean, I'm sure that's not always the case. I'm sure that there are, devious bullies as well. But thinking back on my childhood, I bet a lot of the times that people were teasing me or teasing my friends or teasing, it was like, it doesn't seem like a big deal from the other side of it.
Yeah, they're just making a joke. They're just
Yeah. I mean, I think we can do that as adults sometimes too.
So, The Haunted Mask premieres in 1995. It's a monumental hit. Goosebumps becomes one of the most popular shows for kids in the US, and I imagine in Canada as well. Were you starting to get recognized a lot? Were you getting popular? Was it easier for you to find a date on Friday night? I mean, what was life like at this time?
Um, by this time, I would have been at that arts high school and like, sort of again living in that sort of world that all of that was sort of the norm and made sense. And I don't even think I was the most recognizable person at the school because there were other people who were on shows and stuff. So I don't remember a particular uptick that way or not.
Were you being stopped at all when you were out at the store, at the mall?
Sometimes, sometimes, yeah. More actually for something that I don't think would have had much impact in the States, but I was on that, you mentioned it earlier, a show called Ready or Not.
Yes.
And I had a recurring role on that show, and that show was very popular here. I don't think it ever made much headway in the States, but
It didn't.
it was a big deal here.
I was trying to find it, so I have to keep
Okay.
looking, but yeah.
It was like a teen coming of age. It played here. I'll give you an indication of like it was the lead-in show for Dawson's Creek
Oh wow.
in
Yeah.
Canada.
Was it like Degrassi level
Yeah,
popularity?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a comparable thing,
Okay.
but very much centered on two young female characters.
Gotcha.
Kind of
Yeah.
the sort of defining characteristic of it. So that was probably where I got recognized the most, just because for my age group, that would have been a much more recognizable thing.
Gotcha. The story of the Haunted Mask. I mean, how did you feel about the episode when you eventually watched it? Uh, do you feel like you were a little too old to enjoy it, or
I mean, maybe in terms of like getting caught up in the like, I think an 11-year-old might actually get scared in the scary parts, and
yeah.
and I wouldn't have had that, but I think it lasts because it's pretty timeless. It's a pretty, it's really it's a fairy tale,
Hmm.
right? And I think
Yeah.
it shares a lot of hallmarks with a Grimm's fairy tale or so I think it's just really solid that way. I think that those two girls are both really terrific.
Catherine
Um,
Long and Catherine Short.
yeah, yeah, short and long. Um, so I think it holds up for that. We had, Colin Fox is there as the storekeeper who passed away recently,
I
but
wanted to ask you about working with him.
legendary Canadian character
And you worked
actor.
with him on Sci Factor as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what was he like to work with?
He's old school, He was like
Yeah.
he was a thespian. He
Hmm.
was he was an old school actor, again someone who had known my family and
Oh, all right. Yeah.
yeah, so so really lovely. But yeah, I mean it holds up. I think Goosebumps as a whole, both the books and the show hold up. Like my 7-year-old loves Goosebumps.
Oh, that's
Loves
amazing.
Goosebumps. Loves the
Have you
books.
introduced him to the show,
I don't
your
know if I've
episode
watched it
specifically?
with him yet. I think maybe my wife watched it with them once, but I haven't. I think I might be embarrassed. I think I might get shy around my kids.
The first one, you're actually so I mean you're in that one quite a bit, but part two, The Haunted Mask 2, you're in that
Hmm.
one a lot more. I think you
Well,
take
because
on
it
more of an
centers
active role.
on the guys more, right?
Yes. Yeah, because it's your friend who's being overtaken by the mask, by
Yeah.
a mask, I should say.
Yes.
So, when is the last time you watched the episodes?
I have no idea.
It's been a
I
while, huh?
think I think I watched some clips of it before, like a con or something, just so that I could remind myself of
Sometimes people will ask you to write down a quote that you said during the episode, so you got to
yes,
have one
yeah.
locked and ready. Yeah.
I
You
have
do
a go-to for that, which is I hate mints.
that. That's right. They're going
Which
through the
is
candy in the
they're going through a
graveyard. Yeah.
candy, and here's my inside baseball story. So that was an ad-libbed line in ADR.
Really?
So we were doing ADR for it, which just in case people don't know, that's where you go in and you fix a dialogue after filming. So you're in a recording studio and you're watching it, and it was sort of silent, and they said, "Can you just say something as you're going through the candy?" And he tossed something behind him, so I said, "Oh, I hate mints," and everybody laughed, which was really lovely, and it actually became a running joke in Goosebumps
Yeah.
that the phrase "I hate mints" is in several episodes
Yeah, it is.
as
Yeah.
just like a little Easter egg, including an episode that features my voice.
Is this my hairiest adventure?
Is correct.
Yeah.
And I think I snuck in an I hate mints on that as well.
That's awesome. I mean, how did that come about? I assume that the actor that they had chosen for whatever reason, they didn't feel like his delivery was quite what they were looking for in terms of his voice. We don't know what it sounded like, but so they contacted you.
Yeah, so the actor who had done it, who was by all accounts a really great actor and
Yeah.
had auditioned really well, for whatever reason, when they came to filming, he had gotten really mumbly. It was
Oh,
actually very difficult to understand what he was saying. It's kind of like a Benicio del Toro in the in the Usual Suspects, but like without, but not intentional. Um, and so, as you had alluded to, I had done a lot of voice work,
right.
and voice work was
And you were
kind
doing
of
Little Bear. I mean, a lot of
Little
a lot of things.
Bear and a few other things at the time. So I was very comfortable in a recording studio, and it kind of had to be done fast. And I was good at ADR. I was good at matching lips.
Cool. Yeah.
So it was a very last minute, like they called me in, and I knew everybody from having done the Haunted Mask episodes, like the production team, and we sat in a recording studio in Toronto called Sounds Interchange. That is not called that anymore, but it's still a recording studio, I think. And I think we started at like 9 o'clock at night, and we went till like 9 o'clock the next morning,
Oh
and
my
just like
goodness.
did the entire episode.
That's something else. A lot of you young actors during this time period, you are working at night because when they were shooting a night scene, especially, I mean, they wanted genuine looking nighttime scenery.
Yeah.
Later in the series, they actually started shooting nighttime scenes during the day, so it didn't always look quite as authentic. Uh, I'm glad it didn't seem like it stunted your growth in any way. You seem
No, I mean, there's a whole
okay.
generation of actors whose circadian rhythms are just absolutely trash, but
So, I want to talk about Sci Factor a little bit. So, this was a show kind of like the X-Files in Canada, where a team of investigators they're examining cases of the paranormal. Dan Aykroyd was the host of the series,
and the
uh,
executive producer, I think.
and a producer, yeah. And I think his brother might have been involved as well. Colin Fox of The Haunted Mask, like we were saying, was a regular on that show. You shared some scenes with him. One of the reasons I wanted to bring up this episode is that you're the star of this one, as opposed to, say, The Haunted Mask.
Hmm.
Uh, and I feel like everybody listening to this episode of this podcast, go and watch this. It's on YouTube, so I was able to uncover it. You
Uh-huh.
play someone who has telepathy, and
Hmm.
you're like tortured by this gift of telepathy. You have severe headaches. You're very good in this. It was just
Oh,
such,
thanks.
yeah, it was just so cool to see you take this like lead role of the episode and do such a great job with it. I mean, so how did it feel? I mean, I know you've had other roles in the past where you were the main character of the story, but for this one in particular, do you have any special memories of it?
The thing that I remember more than anything is learning how to shoot a gun.
Yeah.
I don't want to give anything away, but there's a Chekhov's gun in this episode. And I am not I grew up in the city. Like I am not a kid who like went out with a 22 and shot cans off of fences or anything.
Well, in Canada, I mean, again, this is an outsider perspective, but guns are not quite the norm there.
No, not as much at any rate. So I'd never, it is an intense feeling to shoot a gun. It is, particularly on a set, they take a lot of precautions. They're very careful. They're overly careful.
That's good.
The effect of which can sometimes be like you get even more nervous because it sounds a
Yeah.
lot more dangerous than it actually is. Because obviously you're working with blanks and stuff, but we all know these things can go wrong.
Yep.
It's tragic when it does. And frankly, I think the Brendan Lee and the Crow, like that would have just happened right around
Oh,
this time. Like
really?
that would have
Yeah, and
been
that was a blank. It was like,
especially for like a
yeah.
a music nerd goth adjacent kid like that. Like I knew that story well.
Yeah.
So I remember that really really strongly. And then I also remember one of the weirdest shots I've ever had to do. And I don't know that I've ever actually seen the episode, so you can fill me in on this, but
Mhm.
is there like an extreme close up of an eyeball?
Ooh,
or am I mixing this up with something else? But I
No,
think it
there
was
there might have been.
Factor. It was
I just
like
can't
when the
remember.
telepathy happened, they had like this crazy extreme close up of my eye, and I remember like taking several takes because like you can't blink.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
shooting it with a high speed camera, which means that they have to shoot it for a longer time. And you just have to like not blink, but also not have your eyes water, but also not move your eye. And like I remember that really clearly of being like, this is a weird job.
They should have had an eye stand-in, like an eye
Yeah.
model.
Well, I
Like
guess now
they
they
have
could
hand
just do it with
models.
CGI, but
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. So, Colin Fox, again, you worked with him on this episode, and you're actually sharing scenes with him, speaking with him. He recently passed away. Do you have any? Did you work with him in any other things other than this and The Haunted Mask? I know he was in Adventures of Shirley Holmes. He was in quite a few episodes of that, and you were in an episode of that as
I
well.
did an episode of that. I don't think I would have had any uh, overlap with him. I remember him more as a guy that I would see kind of at opening nights at the theater and stuff like that. Like, he because he was sort of an elder statesman of actors in Canada. And I hadn't seen him in years. Um, but I know from speaking to other people, he was always very gracious, particularly when it came to talking about the haunted mask and stuff. And like
Yeah.
he embraced that people cared about it. Um,
So growing up in the US, I knew him very well from The Haunted Mask, of course. But before that, he was in My Pet Monster. It was like a
oh,
direct-to-video
yeah, yeah, yeah,
story
yeah.
about like the stuffed animal that we all had in the 80s. And so actually when I saw The Haunted Mask for the first time, I was like, "Oh, that's the guy from My Pet Monster."
Was that Fred Savage, My Pet Monster?
Oh, was that
Or am I
that's
confusing it
Little
with somebody else?
Monsters.
That's Little
Yeah,
Monsters.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh yeah, so I knew him from that, and I knew him from Tommy Boy. Uh, his role wasn't it was a couple scenes I believe, but very memorable. And to me, like seeing all of this growing up, he seemed like such a versatile actor. Like he could play this kind of in Adventures of Shirley Holmes, he's more of a even though he plays a teacher, he's a bit of a bumbling simpleton type guy, always, not really sure what's going on. And but then when he's in the Haunted Mask, he's this very austere, like Eastern European, vaguely Eastern European shopkeeper. I mean, were you like impressed working with him at all, or
I made the joke earlier of like he was like a thespian, but he was, there's a whole generation, and it's not like it has disappeared, but I do think that there are skill sets that are maybe not as valued in the industry as they once were. And I was lucky enough, I mentioned earlier, like because I started so young and I saw so many changes, I was also lucky enough to work with a lot of these actors of a much older generation,
yeah?
and oftentimes being young enough to not even really understand um, how lucky I was to get to watch some of these people go about their business and that versatility. Someone who comes to mind, and might be just because you just mentioned Tommy Boy, but I worked with Brian Dennehy,
Oh,
and
really?
Brian Dennehy could do anything.
So Brian Dennehy played Tommy's father in the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And was hugely funny and hilarious, but he's also like the bad guy in the first Rambo movie. And he's also played John Wayne Gacy, and he also is Capulet in the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet. Like there are these guys who can do anything
Yeah.
and have this really commanding presence and who take their work very seriously. And it's easy for them, slipping one skin on, or maybe it's not, but it appears to be easy for them.
They're just so good at it, right? It appears like it's
Yeah.
easy. And you were in so you're in the Virgin Suicides. I mean, this cast is stacked with a lot of people that are famous here in the US. I'm assuming Canada as well.
Hmm.
Kirsten Dunst, Hayden Christensen, Canadian actor as well. Danny DeVito, James Woods, Kathleen Turner, and Sofia Coppola directed it. I mean, what was it like being on set for Virgin Suicides? Did you get to speak with a lot of these people or no?
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I certainly did, and it was intimidating, and and fun, and everybody took it very seriously, and everybody was working really hard. I guess the thing that I always take away is remember meeting Kathleen Turner,
Yeah.
and she introduced herself to me, and she introduced herself. She introduced herself with her full name and with that famous voice. He was, "Hello, I'm Kathleen Turner," and
Yep.
you just kind of go like, "Yeah, no, I know who you are. You're very famous."
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I remember having rehearsal with her and James Woods and sitting at the dinner table and meeting all of and I was probably just a nervous, bumbling fool around all the girls, which was my want.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it was kind of like it was at the tail end of I had been on this TV show, Ready or Not, which I
Right.
mentioned earlier, and somehow the crew of Ready or Not, when it went on hiatus, all ended up being the crew of that movie. So as
Oh, cool.
intimidated as I was to be meeting all these big stars and to feel kind of out of it, I also was like comforted by the fact that like the props and the hair and makeup team and like I knew all of these
There
people.
is some level of familiarity.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about Danny DeVito? Did you
Well, I think he just did the voiceover. So
Oh,
he
okay,
wouldn't have ever
okay.
been around,
Right, right. You're right.
unfortunately. I would have
Yep.
loved to have met Danny DeVito. I'm a big fan of Danny DeVito,
Of course.
particularly as a director.
Did
I don't know.
Matilda.
Well, Throw Mama from the Train for
Right.
me was, I
Hmm.
don't know if you know that movie, but that was, you were talking about taping things from TV. I had taped from TV Throw Mama
Yeah.
from the Train
That was
and watched it
wasn't
over and
that
over
like
and over.
a version of Alfred Hitchcock's
Strangers on a Train,
Strangers on a
yeah.
Train? Yeah, I
They're
did see
very
that. I
indebted.
think on TV as well, yeah.
It's a very funny, very strange film. He also made a film that nobody else likes, but that I love and
What's
will
that?
defend, Death to Smoochie.
Oh,
I think Death to
that's
Smoochie is
right. He did
an
direct that.
absolute
Yeah, yeah.
masterpiece, and
Yeah.
I don't know anyone else who likes it, but I love
It's that's another movie I watched. I was younger. I saw it one time. I remember very little of it. Maybe I should watch it again
I
though.
honestly think it's
Yeah.
like a masterpiece,
Edward
but I say that
Norton.
and nobody agrees with me, so I don't
Who?
know.
So Edward Norton's in it. Is Robin
Edward
Williams in that?
Norton, Catherine Keener, and Robin Williams
Yeah.
is Smoochie.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I mean, you've had so much experience acting, working with not just Canadian actors but also American actors. In the U.S., when somebody is a child actor, it's almost we feel like they're cursed in some way. That later in life, if they're growing up famous, they're almost guaranteed to develop some psychological issues, financial problems, and they seem to potentially undergo a pretty severe downward spiral. I don't see that as much with Canadian child actors. I don't know if there's just something different in the water. Maybe the industry treated Canadian actors differently than American actors. Do you have any idea what the difference might be? Or maybe there is no difference. I'm just
I
imagining it.
mean, the thing between our the difference between the two countries, and look, and for what it's worth, I lived in the States for a long time. I was in New York for 7 years, in my 20s, um, but we're so much smaller up here. Like the population of our country is the population of LA. You know, um, so when you think of things in terms of scale, everything is smaller. We don't have the same kind of celebrity culture. I think for that very reason, like in a country of 35 or 40 million people, you actually just can't get Tom Cruise famous
Mm,
or to put it in
yeah.
a more like I don't know who like a child actor. I'm trying to think of an example, but
Well, Ryan Reynolds, right? Is he Canadian?
sure, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But had his success in the States,
Right.
right?
That's true.
So I guess that's a slightly different thing. But yeah, no, I think that there is just we don't have the same celebrity culture, which sometimes is to our detriment as far as our homegrown entertainment industry. Like there is a little bit of an inferiority complex that I think can not be great just for the industry itself. But on the flip side, like it's probably healthier in that sense.
Yeah.
Um, you know, uh, Again, I had a really good experience and I wouldn't change it for anything. But, as an adult and as a parent, I do think kids shouldn't have jobs.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I
yeah.
don't want my kid working in the salt mines, and I
Hmm.
also don't want them on a film set.
Right.
Um,
You want them to have a relatively normal childhood
yeah.
upbringing.
Now, that's not, I hope that doesn't come across with any sense of judgment because I'm not saying I'm right about that. It's a
Hmm.
choice that I've made, that we've made. But so yeah, I wonder.
So you've been doing a lot of acting coaching now. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Are you more of like a private tutor? Do you have like a performing company of some kind?
No, it's mostly private. I do some just through people that I meet, and then some through a studio in Toronto that I work with. Um, Really, ultimately, what happened was when my wife was pregnant with our first child, I suddenly was like, I think I need some sort of steady income, a
Yeah.
thing that I had never had in my life. And so teaching seemed to be a way into that, and then out of the teaching gradually became doing this sort of, most of it is one-on-one preparation for either an audition or sometimes when someone has booked something and they want to go over it. And sometimes you get hired by production. We've hired this actor, they're really great, but they're inexperienced. Can you work with them? And I am not a nerd. And so one of the things that I am fascinated by and endlessly thinking about is actually the mechanics of the art form of acting.
That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah.
it's sort of because it's something I fell into, and I actually feel for like the first part of my life, I didn't really understand it except in maybe an intuitive way. I've had this very interesting experience of like learning how to reverse engineer it and pick it apart, and I enjoy that piece of it. It's there's always a joke. I still work in the theater fairly regularly. Like I don't love performance, but I love rehearsal. The process is much more interesting to me than
Right.
product.
Hmm.
Just, but and so as a coach or an instructor, you really do get to like dig deep into that, and you also have no pressure on you. I also have the lived experience of the insecurity and fear that is at the heart of so much of being a performer.
Yeah.
And I feel that without trying to sound too high-minded about it, I feel that I owe it to the industry to try and lessen that in actors.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah.
Try and say like, hey, here's the hang-ups that messed me up as a young man. You don't need Here's why you don't need them. Here's where they don't help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have an opportunity to do that. And I enjoy it quite a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So I'm a teacher as well.
Oh, cool.
But I don't teach acting. I'm a college professor. I teach psychology. But still, it's a very rewarding experience to be a teacher, to kind of pass on your knowledge and help others become to enter the field of psychology in some way. I mean,
Yeah.
how's that feeling? I mean, being now on this other or being part of this other part of the process in addition to still performing, but now you're helping other performers. Has it been a gratifying experience?
Yeah. I find it endlessly fascinating. I like the challenge of how does this person need to hear this piece of information versus how does this other person need to hear the same piece of
Yeah.
information. I am buoyed by the challenge of that. I
Hmm.
would imagine there's quite a bit of that in the field of psychology too,
Oh,
right?
sure.
Like,
Yeah.
um,
We all
uh,
have our different learning styles, or yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I like trying to be malleable with that. Um, it also has made me a better actor, frankly, because those habitual analytical tools are being honed with more regularity.
Yeah. Yeah. Because now you're starting to really analyze somebody's performance and you start to
And how a
maybe.
script works and what the mechanics there are and why,
Hmm.
you know, I am often saying to actors like whose primary concern is often how do I do this thing or how do I say this thing, And it's like, no, it's never about how, it's about why.
Oh, okay.
Why do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
say it? And once you know why you say it, the how kind of takes care of itself. And I think if you're focusing on the how, it becomes self-conscious.
Uh-huh.
We've all had a conversation with someone who is maybe a little bit socially awkward, and when you can tell that they have practiced their conversation ahead of time. Like I've had that experience of going like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, you were nervous about this interaction, and you have actually like set up a couple of talking points ahead of time, and I
Yeah.
can tell, and it's a bit weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is true of an actor who is concerned with how to say their line.
Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect analogy. Yeah, because I know exactly what you're talking about, and yeah, you don't want that to come through in a performance for sure.
No. Um, so yeah, no, I do find it gratifying. I find it, yeah, yeah.
It's been a good
It's a
experience.
very small, and it's the toy box. Like I don't, there are people out there saving lives, and I'm not doing that.
Well, you're
But
making people feel better though. You're
but
entertaining
I'm
them. That's very important.
yeah.
You're giving them something that they're going to treasure for the rest of their lives, like the Haunted Mask, like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And so, I mean, ending things off here, how does it feel getting back into the groove of Goosebumps? You're starting to, I know that like the Goosebumps crew podcast interviewed you recently a couple
hmm
times.
Those were sort of the first guys to come around and to actually alert me to the fact that people cared.
Yeah,
uh Truthfully, like that's kind of still where it sits, is it just kind of, it's so odd, it's such a fascinating, it's such a neat, it's such a it's such a lucky thing to have accidentally been a part of something that people care about.
yeah, yeah. No,
um
I mean you're so good in these roles too. I mean, not just Goosebumps, but also Are You Afraid of the Dark? Very memorable episode, and your performance in it's very important. So I wouldn't say it's just accidental. You're lucky to have been part of the enjoyment of these episodes is because of your contributions.
well,
I
that's kind of
want to
it.
make that clear.
Thanks.
Um, so let's see. You're going to be at the Houston Horror Film Fest, August
hmm
8th to the 10th. And there's going to be other Goosebumps people
Yeah, I
involved
think
there.
Catherine Long is going to be there,
Who played Carly Beth in Haunted Mask, right?
and Anik,
Anika
who did the
Bonson. Yep.
voice of Slappy.
I'm going to be talking to her later this week, actually. I'm really
Oh,
excited.
terrific.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
she's
she's,
a lovely, lovely human being.
yeah. So yeah, Houston Horror Film Fest, August 8th to the 10th, and also the New Jersey Horror Con, September 27th and the 28th. That's going to be in Edison, New Jersey, which is 1 hour from me. So I will be there.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, I'm going to meet all of you. I'm so excited. Is there anything else that you want to talk about or address before we close things off here?
No, I don't think so. I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
Of course, it was such a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoyed this chat. Learned so much about this period in the 90s with television and film, and your work has just been so fun. All of the projects you've been involved in have been a big part of our childhood, so thank you for all of that, and thank you for joining me today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks a lot, Jared.
This has been an episode of the 90s Kid Library Podcast. A special thanks to the Rallies for providing the music. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also learn about this episode and future episodes by following me, 90s Kid Library, on Instagram. Until then, this is Jared Goodman reminding you that you are all that and a bag of chips. Peace out.